and we'd come up with who we thought the customer was. And he said, I love it. You can have 10 stores. The only caveat is they have to be open in 3 months' time. And we're like, yeah.
Welcome to today's Success Stories podcast with me, Charlotte Collins. This week I'm joined by Liz Houghton, who's the co-founder of Mint Velvet, which needs obviously no introduction. Liz, it says here you are a pillar of the British fashion industry, having worked at the Arcadia Group for the best part of 20 years. When 2008's financial crash hit, you struck out and co-founded clothing brand Mint Velvet against a difficult commercial landscape. You filled a much-needed gap in the market, and Mint Velvet... This says Mint Velvet has gone from strength to strength, but my God, has it gone from strength to strength. It also says here, tragically, you lost your eldest son, Will, in 2016, and you've used your grief to champion the Don't Forget the Donor campaign. With your family, you've created the Will Houghton Foundation in honour of your son, which works with UK charities to help propel 14 to 24-year-olds reach their full potential. For your services to business and charity. You were awarded an OBE back in 2017, and you're here today to talk life, career, and everything in between. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I mean, so many things to unpack, but we've got to start with Mint Velvet. Mint Velvet, which, by the way, like as I said, I mean, strength to strength doesn't really feel like it even covers it. You guys are thriving in a market where people are not thriving, brands are not thriving. Let's go back to the beginning. Where did the idea come from? You were at Arcadia. What were you doing there?
I'd like to say there was a grand plan, but there wasn't. It was after the company I worked for in 2008-9 went into administration, and I found myself without a job.
Mm-hmm. Who was it? Can you say?
Principals.
Oh, Principals.
Yeah.
There will be people listening who that will mean nothing to.
I know.
But I remember them. Yes.
But it was a great brand in its day, and the people that sort of owned it at the end had put a lot of debt into it. And obviously in the crash, all that got pulled. And suddenly found myself without a job. And I'd worked for some great people in the industry, but I'd actually worked for some not so great people. And, I just thought, I actually want to create my own business. I actually want to create something that put customers and people at the centre of a business. And I wanted to concentrate on product. And there just hadn't been that. It was all about spreadsheets and... fashion is such a fantastic business to be in, but you can really lose that if you concentrate on the wrong things. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing. And luckily, I had two people that thought exactly the same, Lisa and Jane, my co-founders, or two of the co-founders. So we said, let's just start our own business. And that's what we did.
And so what did that look like? How did you start?
Well, around my kitchen table. So we started off just brainstorming. What did we want to do? And actually, it was really quickly that we came to an idea, because we were so frustrated that we couldn't find things we wanted to wear. We'd outgrown Topshop. Like, I loved Topshop. That was my first job. I was an allocator in Topshop, and I just loved going. That one in 214 Oxford Street, going down the escalators. Yeah. That vibe you got when
it was everything.
It was, wasn't it? You just felt a little bit sort of sweaty when you went down, knowing there's going to be so many things you wanted. But there gets a stage where you just outgrow that. And I was like, I still want that buzz, but now I need clothes that, have got better quality, are more sort of flattering and supportive in places. And Jane and Lisa felt the same. And so we just said, well, we've outgrown this fast fashion, but we're not ready to go to those mature brands or all classic, or suddenly pay a lot more for quality. So we just felt that there was something in the middle, and we kind of sort of brainstormed what that was. And for us, it was really modern clothes that reflected the trends, but actually, you could put on and they would just be effortless. They would be comfortable. They'd take you from, like for us, we were dropping our kids off at school. We were going to the office, and then we were going out in the evening. And I love clothes that you can just dress up, dress down. We wanted to feel sexy, but also, like I say, our bodies had changed shapes. So that's where really relaxed glamour was born.
And can you paint a bit of a picture of the landscape at the time as well, for those who, what are we talking, 15 years ago or so? What kind of the brands that were big? I mean, the Zaras, the Mangos that now are big, kind of weren't so much in that space,
They were still around, but what I always felt with Zara, I love Zara, I'm such a Zara fan, but it was so inconsistent, so I was either a small or a large, I never knew what I was going to get. And sometimes I see something, I think, oh, that's brilliant, I love that style. I put it on, it'd be like, this feels like fancy dress. I haven't got the body that needs to wear that. And And there wasn't really a lot of the other brands that are around today. So it was a different landscape.
Yeah. I want to ask about the name, actually. Why Mint Velvet?
Well, I don't know if you've ever tried coming up with a name, but it's probably the hardest thing. We're doing anagrams, we were doing all sorts of different things. But I really wanted a name that was holistic. I wanted a name that when you came across the sort of threshold of a store, or you saw it on the website, it actually you felt something with it. So we came up with one side of names where we said, what about sort of suede or, velvets or, cashmeres. And then the other side, we were like, yeah, but we want it to be fresh and modern. So we were putting all these different names together and coming up with different things. And then, because like I said, it was around my kitchen table, we had fresh mint tea on the table. And Jane suddenly said, what about mint velvet? And I was like, yeah, I kind of like that one. And yeah, that's how the name came.
Tell me about the first 3 months.
Oh my God, the first 3 months. Like, it's just, when I look back at it now, I actually don't know how we did it. Because it's one of those things where it was 24/7. Well, it wasn't just the 3 months, it was 24/7 for about 10 years.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But I think we just had a moment where we were able to seize on something. And when we got that moment, we knew we had to take it. So we'd come up with the idea and we knew we'd had to sort of network to find out how we can take this to market. So luckily, I'd worked with people in the past, so we knew the chairman of House of Fraser. So I called him and he was a very busy man and he gave us like 10 minutes to, have a meeting, which was quite stressful if you think you have to sell a brand that's from scratch. And at that stage, we didn't actually have a name.
Okay.
So we pitched this idea to him and he was like, yeah, kind of like it, come back when you've got a bit more of an idea. And I said, well, funny enough, I've got some boards. So luckily we had visioned what we thought it would look like in terms of what the stores could look like, the shop fit. Jane had done some designs and we'd come up with who we thought the customer was. And he said, I love it. You can have 10 stores. The only caveat is they have to be open in 3 months' time. And we're like, yeah, no problem.
10 stores is in your own retail stores or presence
these
within House of Fraser?
these were concessions, but they still required
shop
fit.
And
they still required product. They still required staff.
Mm.
We were like, no problem. And literally, Lisa and I left that office and we were like, this is like really scary. But we were so lucky in that we had the most amazing directors we'd worked with before, and they supported us. So we had these lovely angel investors that helped us with the working capital. And I'd worked with another great guy called Stuart Grant, who came on board as our fourth founder. And we literally just hit the ground running. So while the others stayed behind and sort of sorted out the logistics side of the business, Lisa, Jane and myself hopped on a plane to Hong Kong and China. And I just remember sitting on the plane designing with Jane and Lisa there every evening, designing on the way back. And we literally just put a collection together so quickly. Wow. We then had to, design all the fixtures. We had to get imagery together. It was huge. And we had to find an office because by that stage, it was the summer holidays and my kids were at home. And I had a dog. We couldn't hang up the range. I remember at one stage we were lying the range on the lawn.
Oh God. Nowhere left to put it.
So, and what was interesting, even though I had been a buyer and I'd run a brand, I hadn't done everything at grassroots level.
Of course.
So you had to almost learn everything over again. How to, like I say, come up with fixtures, how to do a shoot, and all with very little resource or money.
What were the experiences, the past experiences of your co-founders? What were their backgrounds?
We were lucky in that Jane was from a design background. Lisa was from a buying background, and even though I'd been in buying, I'd also done marketing as well. And Stuart came from more sort of the merchandising and operational side. So between us, we covered most things. And actually, also what was really good was our angel investors at the time. What we didn't know, they'd probably done something like that. So I think it really helped that we weren't sort of entrepreneurs that were like fresh out of college. We'd sort of learnt, we'd made mistakes with other people's businesses and money. And so actually we were able to probably do it a lot faster than most because we'd come through that.
How much did you raise initially?
I actually can't remember. That's terrible, isn't it?
Right.
I think we raised enough to buy the stock at the time and pay for the...
And so what did you launch with product-wise? So, you were on this trip to Asia, you were designing. What was the MVP that got you off the ground?
I remember we really wanted sort of quite understated, because we felt there wasn't things that were understated. So I remember the things that we absolutely love were, we came up with beautiful cashmere blend knits, a great pair of fitting jeans, and we always knew that it was actually, prints were really hard to find. You know, prints that didn't age you, that actually felt really relevant and modern. So we had a signature print, and we sort of tried to work the collection so that everything went together. And I think right from the get-go, we wanted it to be easy for the customer. So when she came in, it wouldn't be like, oh, how do I wear that? It'd be, we've thought about that. You wear it like this. So we had this really nice capsule collection. And what was great about that is straight away, she wasn't buying one piece. She was buying 2 or 3.
What, obviously, apart from the time constraints, what were the biggest challenges you faced in those very early months?
Definitely time, as you said. But funnily enough, it's all the things you wouldn't think about. So the very hardest thing we did was getting a BT landline to the office, which I know
so ridiculous. No, I get it.
It sounds ridiculous. And we thought, how on earth are we going to get all this range and do it so fast? And we did manage to do that. But getting a BT landline to work...
Yeah.
And it's those sorts of things. So I remember sort of running up and down the stairs trying to, get a Wi-Fi connection. And it's those things that really...
There's irritating
Yes,
things.
And I think you take your frustrations out on those more in some ways.
Well, and also in those very early entrepreneurial stages, you're doing it all yourself, right?
Yes.
You're doing top-bottom jobs that you wouldn't otherwise have done.
But you know what? I'm so glad we did that, because now when I look at the business and I look at how it's developed, it's a really healthy business because we knew how everything was built and we had empathy with what goes into things. And I think maybe before I took certain things for granted, and I absolutely didn't once I had to do them all myself.
You made it into House of Fraser. 10. You ended up with a 10?
Yeah.
And how did it go to start with?
Well, we actually ended up with 10 concessions, but at the time we thought we always wanted to have an omni-channel business. So we launched those 10 in October, and I remember selling the very first item because I went and did the shop fit. Or I didn't actually do the shop fit, obviously.
You were there.
I laid it out.
Sure. And what was that first item?
It was a really beautiful grey sort of Devore top, and I sold it to a lady going to a Tom Jones concert.
Cool, sure.
And she just loved it. So we opened those, I think they were like in October. And then 2 weeks later, we opened 2 solar stores. So we opened one in Chichester and one in Windsor.
And why there? Why those locations?
Because I think we sort of understood who our customer was going to be. We wanted to go for sort of affluent market towns. And also the rent is much more affordable. Sure. So if you are a new business, we knew that they would have customers that would, resonate with the brand. And then we opened the website a couple of weeks after that. So even though we had the concessions, we always knew we wanted to have a little bit more ownership.
And how did those stores perform?
Literally from the get-go. I mean, I think we were slightly blown away because to start off with, we just told our family and friends, and particularly with the website, it's like, who knows who, let's just send them an email. Sure. And it went from 2,000 names to 3,000 names. And then people coming into the stores, people going past the mats in the House of Fraser. And it really snowballed so fast that I think by the Christmas, House of Fraser had come back to us and said, do you want another 24?
Wow.
And we were like, oh my God, we're going to have to do this again. We're going to have to really scale this up. And I think really from day one, it just resonated with the customers and built incredibly fast.
Do you think if you were setting up a business today, or the same business today, would you still take that bricks and mortar first approach?
I actually think if you can do the whole thing together, it is better. Because what you get with stores is it's much more experiential. So you get to feel the fabric, because a lot of people can do a great image. Yeah. But actually, if you can see what goes in, you've got the integrity. And the other thing, I'm such a believer in service. And some customers are very happy, very confident to buy online. You can see it all there. And other people want to have a little bit more help. And I think having that mixture is great. And also they can really play off each other. So now in our stores, we have all this technology where it really opens up the web to the stores. So actually it can blend really effortlessly. Yeah.
But you have how many? 55 UK stores, is that right?
Yes, I think we do. I've even lost count of that.
That is, you everything you're saying makes total sense, but so many have failed to effectively do that. We're constantly hearing about the death of the high street, particularly in market towns and, outside of major cities, but you've managed to sustain that. What has been the secret?
I think you just have to really concentrate on the customer. And I think sometimes people can get a little bit lost in why they are doing what they're doing. And for us, like I say, I think it being that sort of customer centric.
Yeah.
So the minute she walks across the threshold, you know, does the store smell good? Does it entice her? Is someone smiling at her? You know, if she's got a heavy bag, is someone saying, put it down? You know, when she goes to the fitting rooms, is someone saying, can I help you with that? And now what I love, when I go into a store, sometimes, you know, the staff will say to me, they have customers come in, they're not even looking for the clothes, they're just going for a chat.
Oh, that's so nice.
Because there's a real sense of community. You know, and I love that, because I think that's what the pandemic showed everybody, was the fact that people really took for granted what they had locally. And if you can make that into a sort of a healthy ecosystem, you know, with the sort of the bakeries and the cafes, and what we see now is, you know, mums will drop their kids off at school, they'll have a quick blast around Mint Velvet, they might then go and have brunch, and they'll come back when they've got a bit more time, and then they'll spend.
How do you imbue that culture into your store? You know, you've got a big old workforce. I think I saw 750 on my notes. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of people. How are you kind of, you know, making sure that culture is across all your stores?
That's an interesting question, because as you get bigger, it is definitely harder to do. I mean, when there was, you know, the way we built up, it was like 4 of us, then 8 of us, and then 12 of us. And as you say, that's an easier thing to do. But for me, the most important things is to have clarity of what you're trying to do, and to be able to articulate that so that everybody comes into the brand, understands the brand story, what our values are. And it's not just having those values up on a wall and, you know, just saying these are our values. It's actually living those values. And I think that's really, really important. And to make sure that you keep that sort of front and centre, really.
Can I tell you why? I'm going to answer my own question as well about
how you...
go for it. How you have, you know, managed to grow and thrive whilst others haven't. I think there was particularly a patch kind of pre-pandemic where so many brands who might have traditionally spoken to the customer that you're speaking to, you know, a slightly more mature woman, and you know, really kind of nailing that demographic, got scared and got lost and got stressed that they needed to be keeping up with this kind of huge proliferation of, you know, other brands, and you know, this real trend kind of
like trend hungry,
yeah, exactly, just have basically tried to be something they're not. And I think particularly for that kind of affordable price bracket that originally spoke to that group of women, so often, got distracted, thought they should be speaking to a different consumer or should be speaking to every consumer, and really lost their way with who they were speaking to. And I feel like you have really stayed so true to who your customer is and haven't tried to be something you're not.
Yes.
Does that feel...
I think you have to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I think customers really can tell if people aren't authentic, because somewhere along the line it'll come out.
Totally.
And, you know, it's even with, like, again, with service, it has to be natural. As soon as it feels fake, or you're great in a store, but online you're really tricky, you know, it's got to be seamless all the way through. And I think as far as fashion is concerned, I think we've always looked at the trends and we've always said we have to make sense of them. We're not just going to take them. The easy thing is just to say, you know, it's come off the catwalk, just do a version. Sure. But if it's not flattering, if it doesn't suit you, if it's not going to be comfortable, you know, it doesn't work. And the customer will soon not trust you. And I think the most important thing is you have to have that relationship with your customer where she trusts you.
For sure.
You know, and that's what I think we've built up. And what's so nice now is you're really seeing that, you know, across generations. So we see loads of mothers and daughters, which I love. I mean, my daughter's 22 and we now are starting to fight over
I bet.
which Mint Velvet items we're going to wear.
Well, I want to talk more about the products, but I feel like we've skipped quite a big chunk of the journey, haven't we? So how, you know, you started, there was the 4 of you.
Yeah.
And the growth was happening, it was coming fast. How did you grow your team? How did you start to kind of scale up a bit?
Well, I think because it grew so fast, we had no choice but to scale up. I mean, I think within the first 5 years, we got to 50 million.
Wow.
And it was unheard of. You know, we actually couldn't keep pace. So we made some hires quite quickly, and we had some great people, and we had people that, you know, didn't quite fit our values. And I think quite early on, we realised that we have a particular culture, and it's finding people that work in that environment. So we would say that we're a high-performing team. So we're quite high challenge, but we also are quite high support. And it's finding people that thrive in that. So we want people that are passionate, that, you know, are happy to communicate, that have quite an entrepreneurial spirit. And then I'm obsessed with everything, you know, we say it's with soul, but make it personal. I'm slightly allergic to things that are corporate. And that doesn't mean not being professional, but it means, you know, doing it in a personal way, and just always thinking about what is this like for someone else? You know, if I'm going to say that, how are they supported? What were they going to think? So we try and make it quite an inclusive environment, which, you know, isn't always perfect, but I think that's what I was really trying to create with Mint Velvet, and what my founders thought the same thing really was. We believe that you could do business in this way that actually could be really nice and healthy, as opposed to, like I say, definitely the end of the company I worked in. It was so often male dominated. It was all about spreadsheets. It was all about the bottom line. And the things that were never mentioned were customer. We had very little time to play with product, whereas now we have playrooms and that's all we do.
Love that.
It's just playing with product because at the end of the day, that's what the business is about.
That's what we sell. How did you split your responsibilities across the four of you? Four co-founders.
Yes.
That's unusual. You don't hear that very often.
It's actually, you know, sometimes in a marriage you sort of just go to your natural and you don't even know you've agreed they're doing the bins and you're cooking the dinner. But it was sort of a bit like that. So I kind of was the brand in terms of, you know, what I wanted the culture to be, and very much the marketing, the stores. Lisa really took on Lisa is laser-like focused on trend and product, and Jane is just a beautiful designer. And then Stuart, like I said, he was more on the operational side and the merchandising side, and then he really grew that into finance. And we also then, once we'd started, we all took other little bits on. So I remember Stuart and I took on the HR side of life. Lisa took on more of the supply side. So we sort of grew holistically. And then as the business got bigger, we started to take on obviously more directors. And took on people that maybe had specialisms in areas that we didn't have, like digital marketing, on the creative side as well.
Tell me about that as a founder, as an entrepreneur. What's been your approach to hiring and growing your team? And, you know, some people like to, you know, find the people who fulfill the things that they can't do. Kind of what has been your approach or your kind of ethos when it comes to building your team, other than the attributes obviously that you mentioned?
Yeah. I think definitely knowing what you're good at and where the gaps are. I think it's being very realistic about what you can do and what you can't do. And then I think it might have been Steve Jobs that said this, which was this: you've got to hire people that are better than yourselves. And I think I've done a really good job at that.
There's some sort of
I now think everybody I come across, they're actually really good. So yeah, I think it's looking for what you're getting from that person. But sometimes you can get someone that actually on paper looks like they're going to fit, but then maybe just how they work. It isn't just about talent. It is about the way they work as well. Mint Velvet is actually quite a fast-paced business. We're quite agile and we're quite quick to say if we've got something wrong, and we can pivot on that. Some people will find that quite hard. So it's not just finding the right talent, it's finding the right personalities that actually can adapt into that environment as well.
Let's talk about products. Obviously, as you say, that's the heart of what you do. What is your... I mean, let's talk the logistics of it first of all. How many collections are you putting out a year? Do you call them collections? How often are you dropping new products?
Well, every week something is dropping down. Okay. There's always something new hitting the website. But in stores, it's probably every 3 or 4 weeks there's something hitting down, a collection coming through. But what you'll see in stores is you probably get about 40% of the range in store. There's another 60%.
Is that right?
Online.
I know,
because we do leg lengths online. And definitely, you know, we might do, say, the suit in the stores, but we might do the waistcoat online or a skirt online. So there's always that sort of, a lot more going on. Also, our stores aren't always the biggest. So there's a lot of accessories we can't fit in. So a lot of the accessories are also online. And
you obviously started with some kind of core ready-to-wear pieces. At what point did that evolve? Kind of, are you across every category now, and how does that work?
Yeah, we are now, but it was very much an evolution. So we pretty much started on separates. So it's very much denim-based, knitwear, great tops. Then we started to move into dresses. And, you know, dresses have just, particularly the last couple of years, So we've launched a new range into occasion wear. So we do MV Limited, which is definitely for occasions.
It's so good. Right?
Thank you.
So good. What's the collection that's just gone live?
Mint Studio.
Oh my God, that collection is amazing. That green dress we were all dying over. And the pink linen set, it's so good. Like, so good.
The design team and the buyers have done an amazing job. That is really our elevated range. And that is just pushing the boat out that little bit further, but still keeping to our value. So still very wearable, but the price points are just that little bit more expensive. But
still in a high street range, we should say. Like it's
100%. And actually, it's actually fitting a bit of a gap in the market.
Yeah,
because it's not going quite as expensive as others, but it definitely has got elevation, which means that you can do all those beautiful fabrics. You can put more fabric into them, and they're a little bit, just that cut is that little bit more. That has done really, really well. I'm
surprised, yeah.
So, we're really excited about that. So the dress ranges have increased. But then we went into swimwear, and I love the swimwear. I mean, because again, I love a holiday. But I love the whole, when you're in that mindset of going on holiday and you want to have the whole wardrobe. So again, I love the beach to bar, and then you've got the swimsuit and it's all part of that, making life easy for her. We do a nightwear range at Christmas and loungewear that we call Hygge. And that has done really well as well.
Is there one particular item or a particular range that is... Actually, you don't want range, I want items. What is like your best seller? Is there a kind of historic, like, God, we can't believe how quickly that flew off the shelves? And also, is there one thing that's selling like amazingly now?
I suppose if we thought one all over the years, our cashmere blend knits have always been absolutely fantastic. And it's just beautiful quality. You can always put it into whatever is that latest shape. There's subtle changes. And our leather jackets, which are just in the most beautiful sort of buttery leather. And they come in all different colours and shapes now, but they're probably the mainstay.
Tell me about your kind of core collection. Do you have items that have basically always been part of the Mint Velvet offering, or do you always adapt things like that?
I think we always give it some sort of new kind of twist. So it might be subtle, it'll be a zip, it will be just the cut, but every season there's just something. But also, what we want to think is we don't want to make things that don't last. So we never go really extreme on that core collection, because we love that customers come back, want to update things, but at the same time they've got them in their wardrobe and they've got longevity as well.
We've talked a lot about things that have stayed the same, from your ethos to or the product, how the products evolved. But I want to know, fashion and retail is obviously such a changing landscape. What have you changed? What have you adapted? What has, pandemic is what we don't want to dwell on lockdowns, but, what have been the kind of key things over the last few years that have meant you've almost had to take a sit back, pivot, change, do something different?
Well, I think the nature of retail is almost every year you do that, funnily enough. I mean, I think the pandemic was almost so focused and it was so extreme that we did look at the business and we probably did change things around a little bit. It was probably where the web really took off. So we sort of adapted and had sort of roles now in the website that we probably didn't have before. But every season we look at the range and we look at how we run the business and say, how can we make that better? I think technology is probably the biggest thing that is adapting the business at the moment. So, there's so many advances in how people do their jobs. So what I'm loving at the moment is how maybe more manual jobs that we did in head office are starting to be taken by technology, which then is really enriching the lives of those that are doing those jobs, because they've got more time to maybe make better decisions and do kind of better quality work, really.
Do other things.
Yes.
Yeah. What about kind of pivotal moments throughout the journey? What was the first, I mean, I suppose you were such a kind of stratospheric takeoff. What was the first moment where you were like, oh God, wow, we've made it. This is going to really work?
I think it's where you hear customers start talking about you. Lisa and I were on a train once and we sat opposite these two customers. Well, we didn't know they were customers at the time. And they were just waxing lyrical about this new brand.
That must have been amazing.
They'd seen called, and they would be like, is it sort of mint something? We were dying to chip in and say, Mint Velvet.
You must have, yeah.
And listening to them talk about it and sell it to each other. And that's what I love, because I think the success of Mint Velvet has been customers telling other customers. And for a long time, we were a bit of a secret because we did start in concessions and we did start in more market towns. We didn't have any presence in London. We still probably are underrepresented in London. So people were finding us, and that's how we really took off. And I think, again, that is such a great way, because to be recommended is probably the best way, really, isn't it?
It's the most kind of flattering version.
Yeah, because you're endorsed by somebody that somebody else rates. So I think they're not necessarily the real high moments, but they're the moments that you just, or if I'm I might even be in more of a business meeting and, a guy will say to me, oh my goodness, my wife spends all her money on Mint Velvet. And he'll know more about that store than I will, because he spends most of his time sitting in
sat on the sofa there.
Sitting outside the changing rooms.
Do you ever go up to somebody if you see them wearing clothes and say?
No, but a lot of people feel if they know they're going to meet me, they suddenly get all conscious about what they're wearing.
Okay, yeah.
And they'll be like, do you know this? And, they're a bit, say if it's a couple of years old.
Yeah.
And they're like, I know that.
Yeah, I remember. It's my brand. Yes. Yeah. What about the lows of the business journey? What have been the kind of biggest challenges that you've faced over the years?
And I think what makes the business great is that you do have, it isn't dull, but in that you do have highs and lows. Before obviously the pandemic was probably the biggest challenge, but before that we had House of Fraser went into administration. We had something like 44 concessions.
Wow. How does that practically affect, what happens in that instance?
You suddenly don't get paid.
Okay, and that's just taps are turned off.
Yeah.
And do you get your stock back?
Yes, but the stock you have sold, you don't get the money for.
Of course. From X period, from a quarter, how?
It's probably about a quarter.
Okay.
So that was really hard, and then you have to deal with new people, and it changed. The Suez Canal, if we take one recently, all our shipments can't come through. The war in Ukraine completely changes how things work. So there are so many different challenges, and I feel like they're sort of coming quicker and faster these days. We also had our own personal, dilemmas to deal with. Absolutely. So, what goes on in your own personal life, moving offices. So there's just so many things that are thrown at you. And I think the thing that you just have to have is this sort of deep resilience throughout to really master those.
Tell me about your own personal tragedy and kind of how that brought the charity element into the business.
Yeah, so in beginning of 2016, my eldest son, Will, who was 20, was killed. He was out riding his bike. He absolutely adored cycling, and I think he would have loved to have been a professional cyclist. And in space of a couple of minutes, his life was tragically ended, and it just completely takes just changes and dramatically affects your life from that day on, really. And I had to take stock. I had to really think, what we were going to do as a family.
Because you have 2 other children.
Yeah, I had 2 other children, and it was devastating. And those first few months, you sort of, I don't even really remember what I did. I think I did operate, but I don't know how I operated. But Mint Velvet was incredibly supportive, and I'd always talked about Mint Velvet as my 4th child, and it really came into its own then. And the family obviously were devastated as well, but together we thought we wanted to do something where we kind of kept Will's memory alive. And Will was quite an unusual child in that he was quite socially aware, and he knew he was from, he had a great family, he came from quite a privileged background, so he wanted to do good. So when we thought, well, how can we do that? We thought setting up a foundation in his memory would be the best way to honour him, and that's what we did.
What does the foundation do?
Well, it supports children from 5 to 24 from disadvantaged backgrounds. And we had a focus really on education and sport, because what a family really gives you is confidence. And if you don't have a great family background, then you need to get your confidence from something else. And education and sport can really give you that. So we found some brilliant charities that we deal with. So we deal with sports charities, like we've got a brilliant one in Weymouth that does sailing and windsurfing, through to helping care leavers. When they come to leave care, there's just a cliff edge where they fall off. So again, how can we help those? So we helped become one of the charities we support, to a scheme called Propel, which help them sort of just set up and be prepared for higher education, and support.
And how do you, through Mint Velvet, support the charity?
Well, we do lots of fundraising. So we do a brilliant thing called Walk for Will every year, where we do, it's actually not even that long a walk now. It has a fantastic tea party at the end, which I think is now almost...
That is my kind of walk.
It's now
sold.
Now sort of slightly taken over from the walk.
Okay.
We do a charity cake sale, sort of slightly inspired by the Bake Off, and a sample sale. And it's actually just a bringing together. Because I think really what you realise when you have grief is that you need that support system and you need that person to be talked about. You need. I mean, I absolutely love mentioning Will's name as much as possible. So when we have Walk for Will, I'm always talking about Will, and that's a great thing to be able to do.
How do you think your grief and that tragedy shaped you as a leader? How did it affect you within your career?
I don't know if it affected me in my leadership skills.
Yeah, I mean changed you, I suppose, rather than affect. I don't mean in that moment,
yeah.
But I mean long term.
I think it makes you more empathetic. And I think the thing about grief is you can't see it. People say if you could see grief, you'd be walking around with your arm hanging off and people would say, oh, that looks really painful, but no one can see the pain. And I think that you can apply that to mental health. You can, people that have got depression or any kind of anxiety. So I think I am more understanding of what people are going through. And I'm a great, great believer in coaching and therapy. I actually don't know how I would have got through, or my husband would have got through if we hadn't had grief counselling. Because there is no sort of, you can read all the books, but you're in your own environment and you have to make sense of that. And I think that has really helped me put everything in perspective, I think. And I think I've learnt to navigate my way through that by talking to others that have been in a similar boat, really.
Tell me about your OBE.
Yes.
When was that?
That was in the summer of 2017. And I got it from Prince Charles, who is now king, so that's
nice.
Very nice. It was a huge honour. It's such a uniquely British thing.
Yes, it is. You're right.
And Tom, my son, and Sophie, my daughter, and my husband, we all went to the palace, and there was just nothing like it.
What did you wear?
I wore a Roxanda dress, which was beautiful, and it's funny actually because you're videoed. You don't know you're being videoed all when you get into the palace, and they give you at the end just a lovely sort of very different moments.
Like on a ride at a theme park. Sure.
Obviously far more tastefully
I would
done.
imagine so, I'm sure.
And you can just see we're just smiling all the way through, and just even the pictures afterwards, just the whole event, they do it very well. And it's an honour because you're in a room of, soldiers, people that work for charities, people that have done things for the community, business people. And so it's a real cross-section, but like I say, it's so uniquely British that, it's an honour to be.
I bet.
To have that.
In terms of your biggest achievements, I'm sure that's up there, but what else? What are you most proud of?
And I think it's, as I said before, it's all the little things that actually, so I love getting letters from customers. And I often put them in, our updates or tell them to the staff, because when you get a letter from somebody, say, someone's just had a baby and they've fallen out of love with their body, or they're recovering from cancer, or I don't know, they've put on weight, they've lost weight, or any changes like that, and they just don't feel good about themselves. And then they come across Mint Velvet, whether that be in stores or online, and then they suddenly say, oh my God, you've changed my life. And you think, clothes have that power.
Totally.
And sometimes you think it's frivolous.
No. It's just it makes me angry when people think that's frivolous. It's everything.
It is. Yeah. It's sort of shallow, but it's everything.
Right. It's an expression of how you feel, and it can your self-esteem is everything. Your self-worth is everything.
And it changes. You can literally go into a, and I see this. We've got some fantastic personal shopping suites now, and you can see women go in and they list all the things they hate about themselves, and they literally will come back and they say, but from that, I then felt confident to apply for that job, go out to that bar, see those friends, and it is life-changing. Yeah. And so when I get a letter like that, I'm like, oh my God, making women feel great. That was always our why. This is why we set the business up. we put ourselves into that because we knew that's how we felt. But when you actually then take that forward and you hear it from other people, I think, that's for me the biggest compliment.
Love that. Well, if you're a fan, write to Liz, please. Let her know. It's been 15 years, just over 15 years. What's left to do? What would you still like to do? You have an international presence.
Well,
right?
just started actually. We launched at the end of last year
in
America. So
what was that like?
Yeah, it's exciting. We're doing it all through brochures and social media. And it has gone better than expected. I think it really, again, if you think about America, there really isn't a mint velvet in America.
They don't have affordable brands.
No,
they really don't. Yeah.
It has really resonated. And talking about those letters, we are getting those letters already from America.
Oh, I love that. Well, they're very enthusiastic about it, so that's good to know.
And they're sending pictures.
Love that.
So they're so proud of what they've found. So that has gone really well. So we're very excited about that.
And what's the plan? Are you just in a couple of states?
We've kind of like, you can get it all in all states, but you can really start to see it, particularly on the coasts, Florida, and Texas actually. So they're the ones that are really kind of taken off at the moment. But I think obviously that will grow over time, and that's given us the confidence to start looking at Scandinavia, other European countries. So I think over the next couple of years, I think international is going to be really the exciting thing. And then in the UK, I think we still have a few markets that we're not in, and we have relocated some of our original stores that are quite small into bigger spaces so that we can take the personal shopping, because that's something we're so passionate about, because we want to make fashion easy. And it's not just about buying the item, it's about buying the outfit. So, we put so much thought into how that top goes with the bottom and, what's the shoe, what's the length of the trouser. So if we can make all that easy for her, I love it. I always say to the staff, put her in the change room, get her a coffee, whatever she wants, glass of wine, and then it's just about making it such an enjoyable experience, because so many people don't find shopping for fashion enjoyable. They find it, too much choice. They just want a friend almost to say to them, this is how it should be. So I think that's the other area that we will really develop.
What would you like to achieve in your own personal career still?
I think you get to the stage where you really enjoy seeing others achieve. And I have the most brilliant team. I was lucky with the founders that I set the business up, and they are absolutely fantastic. But now I've got these wonderful directors, and seeing them develop and, go forward, and then the level underneath them. So I think I take so much pride now in the team. And I can sit back and see that the culture really is the people, and they are making the magic really. So, whether that be in stores or in head office, that really gives me endless pleasure.
We know that SheerLuxe readers, viewers, fans love mint velvet. What can we look forward to product-wise? What's coming up for the rest of spring, summer?
Well, there's so much coming up.
I bet there is, yeah.
The matching sets. I mean, I love a matching set because obviously the work is done for you, and we have some brilliant things coming in. So you alluded to what's coming through in mint. There's another collection just to hit down, and there's some lovely sort of almost sugared almond colours that are coming through. So whether that's tops with lovely full skirts or with trousers, so I think the matching sets look brilliant, and then just lovely linens, just easy effortless pieces that are coming through. And I just think if we just had some hot weather and a little bit of sunshine.
You joke. I got a pair of pink linen trousers for me, not the one for the matching set, just because I saw them on someone on Instagram and I was like, I have to have those, and I put them on this morning and I was like, not just yet, but they're amazing. I know. And they're so comfortable.
I'm the same. I get them out and I think, is it going to be this week? It's like, no,
it's still not this week. Spoiler alert, not yet, but it's coming. The time's coming. Liz, thank you so much. Obviously, everybody knows that you can access Mint Velvet at mintvelvet.com or in one of your 55 stores. If people would like to support the Will Houghton Foundation, how can they do that?
We have a website, so it's the Will Houghton Foundation, and you can see there all the charities that we support, and there's a Just Giving page that you can donate. So go online.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Today. Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback at all, please do email podcast@sheerluxe.com. We love hearing from you. Don't forget also to rate, review, subscribe and tell your friends. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.